Good night again. So I mean, as I was saying in the previous video, I've thought about an interesting scientific experiment, but I wanted to share it with my audience. But tell you the truth, maybe you've understood it like from the previous video. Just by started talking, I mean, I kind of like just I mean immediately almost immediately lost interest in discussing science, even though it's interesting and it's related to the issue of the duality of the gates that perhaps the all sort of like I mean not only purely scientific implications, but maybe even like this kind of this bit of science maybe found like a relatively quick engineering like I mean applications like in the broad sense of the term engineering. But I really am whenever I start to speak, like I mean recently I always find myself like gravitating towards the state of humanity and the state of where I live. Even though I've spoken about it so much and I don't have anything new to say, but right now I feel like again I still I mean I don't like feel like speaking about this scientific experiment. Maybe I'll do it later tonight. But I want to discuss. I think that this is the right time to discuss. I mean, to mention, not to discuss, to mention something that I've spoken about many times. So I mean, if you are like an avid listener to this channel, or you've done like a binge, lately, you've already heard it. But this is something that I speak about it like at least for the last 2 years. I mean, but I think it should. I mean, it's worth like reiterating, especially at that moment in history. This is about both about Israel and about my own discovery journey. Many people, I mean, many people, I mean, ask themselves, how does he know that? Like, I mean, what are these sources? How does he know all of that? And it's not an easy question to answer, because I have divine inspiration and help of God, but it's not something that you cannot speak about at all. And again, my earliest efforts in what I call the blog, which is written material from about 3 years ago, I mean, much of it was, I mean, surrounding this exact issue. I wanted to try to rationalize divinations and prophecies. And again, I wasn't the first person to have ever like done it. I mean, it's not like, I mean, a completely new thing. And truth be said, but to this issue, I mean, on this topic, I would like to stress a point. I mean, one way, I mean, that God helps you understand things or learn things is by opening your eyes to things that are around you. Now, this is opening your eyes. This is a term from Genesis, specifically to Hagar. But things like that are, I mean, there are other happening. I mean, there are other, I mean, such occurrences in the Bible. I mean, even more like additionally in Genesis, specifically, in the bounding of Isaac, but specifically in the case of Hagar, there is like a quote, like I mean, I'm not sure how it's translated, like to King James or any kind of the new international version or whatever. But I mean, loosely, I mean, just from the head, it's like that. She didn't have water. She was in the desert, and she just threw Ismail because she didn't want to see him dead, like his son, because she knew that she cannot. I mean, they are both going to die, and until I mean, God opened or the angel of God opened their eyes to see, like I mean, where water can be. She can get water. So many times it's like that. I mean that God opens your eyes to things that are just around you, and you need to be alerted to that. You need to be alert to that. Like, I mean, to accept the grace of God of just watching things around you. Now, one such thing that was incredibly important in my journey, and I spoke about it and written about it since the beginning, is people watching. Watch the people around you. Watch the people where you walk. Watch the people that are around you in the street. Watch people everywhere. People watching. People watching is something that, I mean, is a known thing. Watch the people around you. Watch how they behave. And tremendous amount can be learned from it. First of all, by watching people around me in my work, in the company My Heritage, I should remind you that this was a crucial, I mean, motivator to the start of this journey. Of course, as I said, it wasn't the only thing. It was, I mean, events, I mean, and evidence, I mean, gathered until there was like a breaking point and a change of paradigm. But watching just the people taught me tremendous, like, about many things that were very important to me. And later, just by watching people in the street, I mean, it was extremely helpful for me to understand many things that were, I mean, essential to this discovery journey. Now, and some people, I mean, today, again, they have aversion to such generalizations because they don't like generalization at all. They think that, I mean, any kind of generalization regarding humans is maybe by definition racist and should be avoided. But this is untrue. Not all cultures are the same. There is nothing genetic about it, especially not biological. I mean, in Israel, I mean, the Jews in Israel don't really have anything in common genetically or biologically. This is a myth. There aren't many like countries in the world that are so mixed ethnically like Israel. There are so many types of like people over in here that no ethnicity, I mean, like or race, or as you call it, I mean, connects them at all. What connects them is culture, and this culture is evil and even satanic, and must be destroyed completely, annihilated from the face of the earth. And you can watch it only if your eyes are open. I mean, I started this discovery journey when I was 35 years old, and I was always a critical person, and I mean, had like a very, opinionated person, and I wrote and studied. It's not that, I mean, I was like a monk in a lair until the age of 35, not at all. But again, a new kind of like openness to things that you see around you, and also openness to the possibility of generalization. Not fear, don't be afraid of generalization because they are needed in order to understand the world. And don't fear the implications, because if the implications are severe, then the situation is severe. You need to watch reality, to see reality. And I've seen reality, and I've documented it many times. And one thing that became evident to me at some early point was that it's true that some people, especially abroad and also in Israel, see me as reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And I suspected it right from the beginning because of reasons. I mean, it's not the subject of this. I will skip. I'm reiterating why now, because it's not the subject of this video. But when I opened my eyes to things around me, to how people behave in the street, in the workplace, I understood pretty quickly. I mean, not immediately, but maybe like 3 years ago, something like that. I understood that this is not the only historical issue involved, the issue with Jesus, and probably this is a secondary issue, and to many it's like non-issue at all, or just a curiosity. but there is actually a variety of historical issues that are related to my existence from the history of the state of Israel. I understood that it's impossible that whatever, conspiracy that I'm part of, and the whole issue with the aliens, the foreigners that gradually, was starting to be clear to me, very gradually and slowly, I understood that this is actually a series of episodes, not with regards to Jesus, but things that happened in Israel, and that I had predecessors, and that Israel was already greatly punished. After some time, I understood that the punishment was global, and I also understood that there was several, waves of punishment, and I spoke about it quite a bit. But initially, I understood that the state of Israel was already punished severely, and that they hate me, not, only in a secondary way because of the Jesus, identification, but much more so because they identified me with a predecessor, and this reminds them of a huge scandal or huge, crisis that was left outside the eyes of the public, but it was well known inside intelligence circles in Israel, and that it was culminated in a catastrophe of the death and injury and terminal infertility and loss of children of tremendous amount of people in Israeli scale. And that when they see me, they recall these events. They do not recall the destruction of the Second Temple, or the sermon on the Har HaKfitza, or Kfar Nahum, or whatever. No, they don't think about that. They think about what happened here, and some of them, are still living this reality. Like for example, the husband of my mother, Shaul Ronen. Just an example. They still live this reality. It didn't happen very far in the past. Initially, I placed it during the 1970s, but after several months of thinking, I kind of postponed it to the early 1980s. But maybe, and I already covered this issue at length, this is actually, what they called in historiography a telescopy, which means watching many events that actually are not related, close in time, or not in the same time, but watch it on the same plane. This is not the key issue. The key issue is that just by watching people around you, you can understand very important key issues. For example, that this is actually a series of historical dramas, and later I understood that more that it's not only this guy the predecessor in the 1980s, but there were actually other episodes, and I also understood that my own family was related to several of these episodes, as discussed in the Ziggurat of Ur saga. And I understood many things. I understood that this is actually a very long, something that happened, that started long ago, and this is essential part of the culture, and that the Jews in Israel were already punished several times, and because of that, they only become more cruel. Because if God punishes you and you do not change, many times you only become worse. Because the ego is only making your heart harsher and harsher, and you become even more resistant to change, and more hateful towards God, and more hateful towards anyone that criticizes you. And this is exactly the kind of hatred that I am subjected to all my life, but certainly in the last couple of years. And just by watching people around me, it was clear to me. Now another thing became very clear to me. When I watch people, certainly when I walk in Tel Aviv, or fish, along the long beach, beach strip of Israel, and people always identify me, and it took me years to understand why, because the explanation for that is both extremely convoluted and also related to a miracle. And I mean, it's extremely difficult to understand pieces of the puzzles that are related to miracles. Miracles, I mean, are not, I mean, from the point of view of my discovery journey, miracles are a huge problem. I always try to seek, like, I mean, rational, like, an organic development of events, and also rational behavior of people, even though many times they are not rational, and this is also making the discovery journey very difficult. But miracles are like, I mean, you know, like, I mean, like chaotic events that is extremely difficult, like, to place inside the puzzle. That's why it took me years to understand why people identify me wherever I go, because the explanation is both extremely convoluted and related to a miracle. There is no explanation that I can see of that is not miraculous. Again, just, I mean, if you don't follow, I will very shortly, I will say that this face is a known face in the Israeli cultures, probably for something like 100 years. It was not photographed because it was always related to intelligence, like to the secret level of, like, the Israeli intelligence. But it is probably known for, like, at least 100 years, because it's a face that is the standard face of transgenders from Venus. When females change their sex to males in Venus, they many times do it to this face. And this fact in itself does not relate to the Israeli occupation and subjugations of the Venusians, because this phenomenon predates Israel maybe by thousands of years. Maybe by thousands of years. But it was a known phenomenon, and it is still a known phenomenon. That's why every time they see everybody that is related to the huge intelligence and security sector in Israel, when they see this face walking in the street, they immediately think that this is a transgender for Venus, and they have specific protocol of how to deal with him, which means treat this person as the lowest rag on the earth. Like, not only, I mean, walk over him, but, I mean, stick your boots in his face to the ground, to the lowest level possible, because he is like a piece of meat that is there to be raped and, I mean, to be eaten alive. That's what they are. This is my life. I know exactly how it feels. And they all do it instinctively. They all do it, I mean, it's like a procedure for them. And it's like that all the time. All the time. I was born in Israel in 1984 with this face because God wanted me to feel it. So I will be able to know all sorts of stuff that I wouldn't be able to know otherwise. And yes, this also dictated much pain and humiliation, but this was needed in order for me to learn. Now, another thing that I said many times that I want to repeat now is the following. When I walk this road, and when I see, like, people that are literally throwing, like, releasing their attack dogs on me, literally, I mean, משסים בי את כלביהם, literally, many times, not once. When I see people that, I mean, that expect me to be raped, I mean, and are, I mean, they don't understand why I do not let them rape me. Like, I mean, they feel like, I mean, that I don't do my job. They are surprised and even feel offended, like, why do I not let them rape me? When I see women, old women, or women in the Ramat Aviv mall, the second richest, or the first or the second richest shopping center in Israel, with one of the most highest, if not the highest, socioeconomic level of clients, So when I see an older woman tries to guide me to the place in the super farm, like the pharmacy where you can buy a cutter to cut your penis, because it is customary to do so for these transgenders. When I see all these things and many other things, I understand that all of these behaviors could not have been new thing. It's impossible. These behaviors are the product of an evolution of morality. Evolution that lasted many decades, in which there were constant mutation after mutation, hundreds if not thousands of mutations in the culture of Israel. And each mutation was of the same sort, which means breaking new record in the destruction of any human value. Breaking new records of the lowest of behavior. Each time doing another thing that totally violates everything that is human and so to be human. And after this was done, it's become standard, and then the new record is broken. I understood that the way they treat their enemies, or the people they think that are their enemies, no matter if it's like Palestinians or Arabs or Iranians or whatever, that it's actually unbelievably cruel, and that everything that they say and that they teach like in the public sphere about like the morality of the IDF and shit like that, this is meaningless. Yet in reality, the history of Israel is the history of mutation of morality. Mutation after mutation. And each mutation is a new law, a new crime against humanity that becomes a new standard. Everything that you can think of, they have already done, and although it became a standard. Think about the worst kind of thing, raping of children, mass murder, torture, without end, the worst kind of incarceration, every kind of thing that you can think of, eating people, like cannibalism, everything that you can imagine, they've already done it long ago, and they actually made it their standard. It became a standard. And only after this kind of history of mutations, you can actually see in the streets what I've seen so many times. When I see a person, like 20 years old or 30 years old, that acts the way that they act towards me, you can see it on their face that, they see you as an object, something to be used, less than an animal. You understand, this is not an antisocial behavior. This is a strictly social behavior. This is not an antisocial phenomenon, and it cannot be explained as manifestation of antisocial disorder or an outlier of morality inside society. No, it's impossible. This can only be explained because this person is part of a society. And this society is cruel way before this person was born, and even before his parents were born. And the cruelties that allowed him to act the way that he acts have started 100 years ago, at least, if not much more than that. This person, knowingly or not, shows the Satan or the ego when it clutches humanity in the worst kind of clutch. When it holds humanity in their throat. And this can only happen when a society is entirely addicted to the ego. And this only happens after hundreds, if not thousands, of mutations in the morality of the society. Hundreds, if not thousands, of breaking of the records of low moral behavior. Every time doing something that is even worse than before, and then this becomes a new standard. And only then the ego is so strong. Only then Satan, strangles the society by its neck. After decades, if not 100 years, of endless series of mutations, endless series of destruction of any kind of value and any human standard. And this is what happened in Israel. This is something that's going on for 100 years. It started before the state was established formally during 1948. I understood it just by walking and watching people around me. This is enough to know. Strictly that thing, that what you see now is a product of 100 years of history, of subjugation of other people. You can see it, you can understand it just by walking on the streets of Tel Aviv and just open your eye to see things around you. This is enough. Just open your eyes, and this is enough.